Welcome back, everyone. In this lesson, we're going to talk about how to get arrays of information from somewhere that is not just hard-coded on our website. So let's think about applications for a second. Right now, this array is hard-coded on our React application. The only way that this code can be updated is if we update this directly using some JavaScript code as we saw, or if we manually update it through typing. Almost all applications don't do this when it comes to any kind of dynamic information. This is dynamic because these values can change. We could get new users, we could get less users. You can imagine that on Facebook, they get millions of new users or users changing their data every single day. It would be completely unrealistic to have that all hard-coded inside of their React code. In fact, what they have to do is they have all of that user data living in a database somewhere. And then whenever their application needs it, they will then ask that database for that information and then use it to populate their website. Right now, what we're doing is we are hard coding in the website. We're not actually calling it from any database, and that's what we want to change. But before we go into that, we need to talk a little bit about single page applications and why it is that a React application as a single page application makes this whole process way easier. So let's break down a little bit of how websites work before and after SPAs. SPAs stand for single page applications, and they use frameworks kind of like React and Angular and Vue to help build them. So what we're building is a SPA whenever we work with React. Now, there are, of course, some nuances once you start doing things like server-side rendering or even static page rendering when you do things like Gatsby, which is a React framework for static pages. But as far as our application goes in this course with React, we're just focused on building our SPAs. But before we understand SPAs, we need to talk a little bit about the world before SPAs. So let's say you have a website. In this particular case, let's imagine you are navigating to zerotomastery.io, which is our website. When you navigate there, what happens is that you actually need some code. And in a non-SPA environment, your browser doesn't actually know how to build this website. So what it has to do, it has to ask for the code from some kind of server. Now, this server is going to host all of the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript required to build your entire website. So your browser is going to go, oh, I need to access zerotomastery.io. What do I need? I need the home page. So you're going to make a request to the server and say, can you give me the code for the home page? So the server is going to say, okay, send you back the required HTML, CSS, and JavaScript needed to build the homepage, and then your browser takes that and actually creates the UI and the page that the user is trying to access. Similarly, what happens if you try to navigate now to zerotomastery.io/React? Well, this is a different page entirely. So the code that we had before for the homepage, not all of it is relevant. So what's going to happen is the browser is going to make another request to the same server and say, hey, someone's trying to access the React page. Can you give me the code for that? And the server says, okay. And it will give off the required HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files for the React page, which your browser then uses and builds that page. This is very familiar if you were using websites pre-2010. Nowadays, there's very few websites that kind of have this interaction, but you might remember before that there was a brief white page when you were navigating between pages on a website, which was when your browser was actually making a request on the network to a server and getting that code, which is why there was that white page, because essentially that's the time it takes for the network request to ask and then receive and then build the web page. Now, in an SPA environment, this is completely different. Similarly, you're still going to ask the browser, hey, I want to access zerotomastery.io. So for the very first time, there will still be a request to the ZTM server because at this point, your browser doesn't have the code for ZTM.io. So it's going to make that request to the server, and the server is going to send back the same thing, some HTML, some CSS, and some JavaScript. But now, remember, our website is an SPA, meaning that it was built with React. So this JavaScript code actually contains the React code as well as the React library and all the stuff that we wrote in order to build the website. So now what's going to happen is that our website, our browser, is going to take that code, build out that homepage, and now, just like before, everything here is the same. You have your homepage, everything is built with the code that we got from the server. But now when you navigate to ztm.io/react, we still have all of that JavaScript and React code. And now React doesn't need to go and ask the server for more code. Instead, using this React code, it itself is going to build the CSS and HTML pages required for the React page. And this is the big difference. We no longer need to go to the server for the code whenever we navigate and change pages. Anything that you see on a website that is an SPA or built in React, what's happening is that components are getting stripped off, they're getting put on, they're getting created, they're getting destroyed. All of this process is all happening live on the browser once we get that initial bundle of code that contains our React code. And this is what makes React so powerful, because now we no longer have any more of those white pages, and there's no more additional requests to the server for page-related code. This is not entirely true in the future once we start doing really customized optimizations, but for now and the majority of SPAs, that's the main difference you need to think about. Any of those optimizations are further down the line, way further down the line. You don't have to worry about that right now. Right now, all you need to know is that through an SPA, we're able to get the entire bundle of our React code and our website code in one shot. So let's talk about what we're trying to do with our Monsters Rolodex. As I mentioned, we already are writing some of this code required to build the Monsters Rolodex website. We don't really have any pages at this point. We have our home page, which is going to display all those monsters, and then we're going to really just sift through them using a search bar. But right now, we don't actually have all those monsters because we're just hard coding them. So what we need to do is we need to access those users from some kind of user API. We're going to ask an external API, which is going to give us back a list of those users that we will then use in order to build out the list. So that code that we have hard coded, instead, we want to get that from an API somewhere. Not only do we have to get it from an API somewhere, we have to learn how to actually bring it into our React application so that we can use it. So that's what we're going to cover in the next video, and I'll see you there.